In the early modern period, it was transferred into the cosmology based on the teachings of Plato, the ancient Greek philosopher, by speaking not so much of nature as of a world soul, a mighty female figure standing between God and the earth and functioning as the fount of life and inspiration. And pictorially, as many of you can see, she was identified with the night sky, the moon and the stars. It's but a short step from here to the 19th century romantic preoccupation with the divine feminine as both, or alternately, a moon goddess and as Mother Earth. More of that next year. None of the medieval and early modern expressions of it represented serious theology. They were all forms of poetic allegory, but the consistency with which this preserved such a figure is striking. I have, however, already laid more stress on popular treatments of supernatural females than those of high literary culture, and it's time now to turn to the three of these, which I'd regard as especially important. One is British, one Western European, and one specifically Gaelic. The British one is the fairy queen, who seems to have been a distinctively late medieval creation. The Anglo-Saxons certainly believed in fairy-like beings, which they called elves, but we know very little of certainty about them, save that they were supposed to blight people with physical maladies like those in the manuscript shown. Effectively, demons. We may presume that elves were prehistoric because they appear near the beginning of English history, and also that the native British believed in land spirits of various kinds, because traditional peoples always do. English texts of the 13th and the 12th centuries contain a lot of information about fairy-like beings, which was to pass into later fairy lore, and which was reported at all levels of society. It included the concept of a parallel realm of human-like beings, superior in some respects to humans, with its own ruler. This was not, however, a consistent motif when speaking of fairy-like beings, and there seems to have been no coherent belief system to contain and explain the stories told about them, which treated them as aspects of reality. High medieval intellectuals struggled and failed to create a general category for them. That category was to be created, ultimately, from a different genre, that of literary chivalric romance, which was composed for and consumed by lords and ladies, and represented patently as pure fantasy. This featured beings, usually called Fays, like those on the left of your image up there, who had sumptuous lifestyles resembling those of the same elites, but wielded superhuman powers. As such, they functioned as patrons, lovers, or predators for the knights and ladies who were the leading characters of the romances. The French word Faye was to supply the origin of the English word fairy, as it entered Britain through the medium of these romances. By the opening of the 14th century, the literary tradition was apparently blending with a popular one, as English churchmen began to condemn people who believed in beautiful female spirits, who danced at night in wild natural places. The position of a queen among such beings, with or without a male consort, emerged in French and English literature around the same time. The classical goddess Proserpine, the Greek Persephone, had some influence in her development as the most prominent existing model for a divine queen of an underworld. And as such, Proserpine appears around 1300 in the romance Arthur of Little Britain as Queen of Faery, while another romance, Sir Orfeo, of about the same date, has a well-rounded picture of a fairyland, which is also the classical Greek underworld. Orfeo is the Greek hero Orpheus searching for his wife. By the end of the 14th century, the fairy queen, or elf